Greetings of the day, the 30th of November 2022, and in keeping with my Lessons in Leadership series, which I am re-incubating. Actually, I did that a few months ago with some interviews, but now with speeches. I'd like to talk to you about three elemental facets. Vis-a-vis their effects over the near term, defined as the next 2 years, 2023 and 2024. I mean, economists in general have the short term to be 5 years, the medium term to be 5 to 15, and 15 to 25 to be the long term. Of course, John Maynard Keynes said that in the long run we are all dead. Nonetheless, let me, for the sake of this speech, define the near term as just 2 years and a month. 2020, the rest of 2022, 2023, and 2024. And in three crucial areas: geopolitics, geo-economics, and climate change issues. Excuse me. And I will be addressing you all in a very lucid manner, in the sense that, given my background in M&A commerce and core competencies in the four verticals of defense, infrastructure, climate change, and emerging technologies, with the substratum of corporate governance, I will be enunciating on a few core points as what would play itself out, and how should entrepreneurs from SMEs to TMCs strategize to face the near term with the land. Let's be very clear. The future isn't what it used to be, and in the post-pandemic era, which we are now in, hopefully, it will be marked by the need of entrepreneurs across the spectrum to increasingly resort to the twin facets of compassionate capitalism and inclusive growth. This is a fundamental prerequisite, a condition precedent to keep your head above waters in the near term, apropos the near term. Now, first and foremost, let me talk about what I believe would be and what should be done vis-a-vis the three major facets of geopolitics, geo-economics, and climate change issues. Let's start with geopolitics. Certainly, I am not part of a cabal of warmongers. I'm a pacifist, an internationalist who would love to see peace more than anything else. So let me dovetail my energies to ideate on what needs to be done at the entrepreneurial realms to foster peace. Because the corollary of peace is prosperity. Now, also please understand that corporate governance and political governance are like the fares and the obverse of a coin. One can't be seen in isolation of the other. Both coexist. So fundamentally, in terms of corporate governance and entrepreneurial governance, when entrepreneurs in these four major verticals of defense, infrastructure, climate change, and emerging technologies resort to methods of compassionate capitalism and inclusive growth, they are in effect keeping their stakeholders happy. This is a condition precedent for the growth of corporations, or for that matter, to keep your head above water. You need to resort to this in the near term. In fact, it will lead even to permanence and sustainable solutions. Now, let's take the first vertical of defense. Now, given the humongous top-line growth of defense companies across geographies over the last decade, including the pandemic years, one thing is certain: the defense companies have spent huge amounts of money, and obviously, many nations, due to insecurity or otherwise, feel the need to enhance their defense prowess so that a strong defense, as it is the best offense, they would feel more comfortable with themselves. Having said that, the defense industry would, with certitude, be an outperformer. But the fundamental issue for everyone in the industry to understand is that, are we dealing with mature nations who genuinely believe that a strong defense is required so that it will establish their presence in terms of their defense capabilities, which itself will serve as a major deterrent. Now, defense companies should really get to the drawing board and only deal with countries who are mature nations vis-a-vis the handling of defense equipment. They should keep away from warmongers, state sponsors of terrorism, or rogue states. Now, given that the M&A in the defense verticals could lead to surreptitious technology transfers, defense entities should be sensitive to that as well. Now, when this happens, the entrepreneurs in the defense verticals, whether they are SMEs or Raytheons or Lockheed Martins, would with certitude play the role of responsible, mature, and responsive corporate citizens. Aegis them generous in the infrastructure verticals. Given that the infrastructure verticals have had a lot of focus even before the pandemic years, and more so in the after event of the pandemic, the infrastructure verticals should pay great emphasis on ensuring that their stakeholders are well taken care of. Fundamentally, whether their prime stakeholders or the employees are well taken care of. This is very, very essential because many from the lowest strata of society across geographies are involved in low-end jobs in the infrastructure verticals. And unless they are well taken care of and their health and wealth requirements are taken care of, it would lead to a lot of social inequity, unrest, inequality, and social strife. Inclusive growth is the mantra as far as infrastructure initiatives go, and entrepreneurs in the infrastructure place, from the SME verticals to the TNCs, should ensure that inclusive growth is the Mahamantra they follow, and that all their prime stakeholders or employees are taken care of very well. Similarly, in the climate change technology verticals, let's be very clear. In the last few years, Mother Nature's fury has been obvious. From tornadoes to hurricanes, volcanoes to earthquakes, and to unreasonable levels of rainfall, unseasonal as well, it is obvious that global warming has had its ill effects. Now, whilst nations can keep arguing amongst themselves, the less developed nations can accuse the developed nations of saying, you did that first, you now tell us what you did, and you pay for it, the polluter pay principle, and then we will do whatever we have to do and stuff like that. Now, as Mahatma Gandhi rightly said, an eye for an eye ends up making the whole world blind. Today, we are in a situation where we cannot get into bitter games of one-upmanship. What we need to do for now in the near term is to find the resources to effectuate sensible technologies that would mitigate the adversities of climate change. Now, this has to be done on a war footing, and obviously the G7 nations, given their apparent prosperity, should, of their own accord, come forward and fund such initiatives. Because, it's a one world concept, and we need to work in unison as far as tackling climate change adversities go. And every nation should be sensitive of this. The rich nations can contribute money, can contribute technology. The less developed nations must ensure that such technologies are eventuated into reality, that the citizenry become part of the movement, and that everyone on the planet works in unison to tackle these adversities on a war footing. Which leads me to the final vertical of emerging technologies. Now, emerging technologies, be they in the realm of AI, information technology, space, or whatever, should be used to ensure the progress of mankind, not to engage in games of one-upmanship, whether it's in the IT verticals or the social media verticals or in space technology, the military uses of outer space, so on and so forth, AI and stuff like that. This kind of technology, these technologies should be used to foster, enable and sustain global peace and prosperity. Now, this will happen only when the G7 cooperate with lesser developed nations, and the lesser developed nations work in unison with the G7. Instead of getting into blame games, they should work in a united manner to ensure that emerging technologies are put to effective use so as to mitigate the problems of the common man anywhere in the world. So, as far as geopolitical issues go, there has to be unison. Unison is the name of the game. Instead of being a part of a cabal of warmongers, be a part of a group which really and genuinely wants to foster peace and prosperity in the truest sense of the words. This takes me to the next major segment of geo-economics. Given that in the near term, define this till 2024, fluctuations would be the name of the game due to various issues caused by the pandemic, perhaps even if I would want to call this era the post-pandemic era, though the pandemic is not really over in certain geographies of the world. Supply chain disruptions are a name are something we have to understand in a very sensible way, because they have become realities, and we'll have to find ways and means to ensure that supply chain issues are tackled astutely, adroitly, and with a sense of purpose, so that the much needed goods are available in every geography of the world at affordable rates. Now, nations should rise above pecuniary gains to ensure this happens. Now, fluctuations being the name of the game, from the commodities market to the currency markets to every market will have fluctuations. And given these huge uncertainties which are bound to ensue, what we need to do is to engage in what I call collective consensus methods. Collectively consensus methods will enable sustainable progress. And what do I mean by this? I mean, very simply, this. Given the factors of production are different in different nations and across geographies, we should, as global players in a borderless market, understand that when certain factors of production point to certain geographies manufacturing a particular product in a most efficient and affordable manner, we should work again in unison to divert all our energies and resources towards those geographies and get those products at affordable rates and, of course, top quality products as well. Now, international mobility should be the name of the game, whether it's capital, whether it's labor, whether it's entrepreneurial ability. We are now in a situation where we should look at the world as one world and not be driven by pecuniary interests. We should only look at the world as one. We should look at humanity as one and work towards our collective interests in the highest sense and purpose of existence. Now, this is what is required, because otherwise, geo-economic issues can really create a lot of problems. If some countries endowed with natural resources, endowed with huge monetary balances, if they, from a dominant position, decide to drive a hard bargain, and I'm not going to name the countries here, then the rest of the world, the developing world, will really have a problematical time. We need to avoid that. Maturity and statesmanship are the name of the game now. We need to ensure, above all else, that stewardship of the finest kind takes over, and that leaders and citizens across geographies work in a united, cohesive, and a cooperative manner. It's very, very crucial as far as geo-economics go. And to give you an example, when there are regional trading blocks should realize that there are other regions of the world as well. And if there's a surplus of wheat in a particular regional trading bloc, they should ensure that the surplus is diverted to other regions which have a deficit in terms of wheat and stuff like that. So this kind of cooperation is very, very crucial, especially in the energy markets. This is a time that fluctuations and uncertainty could, really send the energy markets in a tizzy. Developing nations will suffer a lot. So we'll have to ensure that some parity ensues, and that can happen only with cooperation and perhaps even barter trade. Some of the richer nations and oil-producing nations can supply oil and energy, and in return get wheat and rice and other stuff as barter. Now, barter in many ways will be a hedge against inflation at unreasonable levels, and we really require unity amongst nations and amongst regional blocs to ensure that the basic requirements of food, clothing and shelter are available to every citizen on the planet. This is the least we can do to our brethren all over the world. And nations should really do everything they can. Respective parliaments, senates, and so on and so forth should strategize to ensure that a level playing field is provided for in the next 2 years. I'm calling for unison of the finest order now, because otherwise we will see tremendous uncertainties and the less developed nations would really suffer a lot. The detrimental consequences would be devastating, to state the least. And I implore all nations, the citizens and their leaders, to collectively work towards ensuring, sustainable growth and development for the next 2 years. Thereafter, a permanent solution can evolve. And finally, with reference to climate change. Now, climate change, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, cannot be done in isolation. Every nation, every citizen, anywhere and everywhere in the world must work very, very hard to ensure that he does his bit towards mitigating the adversities of climate change. Whilst capital is an important issue, implementation is an equally important issue. And unless and until both are in tandem, mitigating the adversities would be a humongous task. So, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's geo-economics, or whether it's tackling climate change adversities, and since my core competencies are in the four verticals of defense infrastructure, climate change, technologies and emerging technologies, I have dovetailed this plea, I'm not calling it even a speech, a plea to my fellow citizens across geographies and to leaders of various nations to come together, work in a united manner, work for the betterment of the world, for we owe it to each other to live in peace. We owe it to each other to ensure that there is prosperity around the world. And above all, let us not forget that we are one world and that we have to be there for each other. That's the best way to survive, to prosper, and to live a very healthy existence. Thank you so very much. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.